All right, I'm going to give you a little overview of the I/O connections on the robot, the LR-Mate robot. So what we have to do, this robot controller is turned off, and I'm going to open up the controller door and show you where the I/O connections originate inside the controller. So if you look carefully, I'm going to just pull this down a little bit. There's a pair of connectors right in here. See this big gray connector? That's plugging into one of these. That's one of the I/O connector outputs and inputs. There's another one next to it, just behind it, that you can't see, that nothing's plugged into. That's a 50-pin connector, and these are two 25 wire cables that we actually made here in the lab. Soldered all the pins to the correct locations. And these gray cables come out of the back of the controller, right here, and they're routed up here to this wire duct, and then broken out onto a terminal block. So on this terminal block, we have a group of 20 inputs and a group of 8 outputs. These wires here, varied colored wires, are going back through here, back into the controller. So most of these inputs have nothing connected to them. We've got a few things connected to the first 4 inputs, one of which is a limit switch that we just kind of zip tied to the side. It's not really connected to anything mechanical, but it's just there for the purpose of illustrating the input. And you can see when I flip the switch, the corresponding input is lighting up. These inputs have these terminal blocks have LEDs, which is very handy to see. So you can really see when the input or the output is activated. So the wiring to this is just a simple switch, the limit switch. So one of the wires to the switch comes from 24 volts. The 24 volts goes to the common side of the switch. The other side of the switch comes to this through this wire. And so when that closes, when the switch closes, all it's doing is it's connecting the 24 volts from this blue wire through the switch to that brown wire. And that is applying then 24 volts to the input, which is interpreted as a true or a high input. So we have all the inputs are on the top level. These are double level terminal blocks. So the wire entry here connects through to the one on the top, right through here. The one on the bottom connects through to the bottom over here. Now that bottom rung, I don't know if you can see this, but if you feel closely, there's this orange, this is called a bus bar. It's basically a big piece of metal that plugs into every one of those connectors on the bottom. So they're all shorted together. This is all grounded. So this entire bottom row is ground. There's a label here that says 0 volts. And then of course on the other side there's also ground. So sometimes you have sensors that have 3 wires, one for 24 volts, one for ground, and one to go to the input. Those are like more active proximity switch sensors and things that have active electronics. A simple sensor or a switch, a push button switch, would have just the 2 wires, one from 24 and one directly to the input. So we have the 3, the ground is right here and available in a whole bunch of places, and then also 24 volts is available on this whole terminal block. This entire gray terminal block has also been bussed together, and it's all at 24 volts. And the power supply is right here. We added a separate power supply to power the inputs and outputs. So this is the I/O terminal block, and we've got the power on in this robot. So what that's going to allow me to do is actually see some of the outputs turn on and off. So let me just show you. If I go to Menu, I/O, and I'm going to start with the digital I/O.